The following program was paid for by the friends and partners of WLMB-TV 40 Toledo.
Isaiah chapter 58 gives this picture of when you get involved in helping those that are oppressed and those that are marginalized, God actually uses that to heal your soul in a way nothing else does.
Following God's call can be exciting, challenging, and oftentimes scary. It can take you to places you never could imagine going and also turn your life upside down and inside out. Well, today's guest has taken an amazing journey, taken his family from a comfortable suburban ministry into an extremely impoverished and broken neighborhood. I want to welcome pastor of that neighborhood church in Toledo and author of Rooster in the Hood, Pat Cannon. Welcome, Pat.
Thank you. It's good to be here today.
Thank you so much. We are honored to have you here to come out here and share your story.
Yeah.
If you could start by telling us a little bit about yourself.
Sure.
And your book, Rooster in the Hood.
I have been in ministry about 35 years, and I have my wife and I are team players in this. We always have been. We have 4 kids. 3 of them are pretty much grown and gone and doing their own thing, and our last one, Peter, still lives with us. And this journey to North Toledo started about 8 years ago, and it has been quite a journey since we started. And my book, Rooster in the Hood, that's really kind of our story of moving from a place that was somewhat comfortable and predictable to a place that has really made us desperate for God.
Well, why did you decide to write this book?
I think because for a number of reasons. One is that I wanted people in middle class to understand how to really be effective at ministering to people that are living in generational poverty. And the other reason is because I wish I would have had a book like this that I could have read before I stepped into a ministry like this. It would have really helped me to know what my expectations should have been. And then probably third is that I really needed to do that for myself. I really wrote that to help me to organize really what has happened to us in the last 8 years, because it has been a journey. I think my wife and I think we would tell you we're not the same people we were 8 years ago.
Sure, this is quite a story. It would definitely change someone. As I was preparing for the show and talking to some people around the station and saying, oh yeah, Rooster in the Hood, they're like, Rooster in the Hood, well, why the title? So, we got to address that.
Oh,
why
boy.
the title Rooster in the Hood?
Well, okay. Let's go back 45 years. And that was while I was living in rural Nebraska. Our neighbors had a ravine that went for miles. And so as kids, we would go over there all day long and be over there for hours and hours. And so one day, we decided to play hide and seek. And so they had barns and they had chickens, and they had always warned me about this one rooster, that it was really mean. And I was like, I didn't know that roosters had emotions. I thought they were just chickens. So, so they started counting, and so I found this cruel little building to hide in, and I thought nobody's going to find me there. So I crawled in this little building, and I can still remember the smells. It's the hot, it was a hot day, the hay, the chicken droppings, and I'm hiding there. And all of a sudden I'm looking around, and all of a sudden there are these 2 little beady eyes that saw me. And in a matter of seconds, this ball of red and black feathers just came at me, and I swear I heard it growl, but it came at me, chased me out of the building, around the barn a couple times, and I finally got away from it when I went up the hill, and it finally went its way and thought I wasn't worth it anymore. So, and from that time on, I was scared to death of roosters. And so let's fast forward 45 years. And when God first called my wife and I to North Toledo, I thought he was nuts. And so I had my but God moments where you God calls you to do something, you're like, but God, you don't know who I am. I mean, really, what I've gone through and stuff. And so I had quite a few excuses on why I thought it wasn't a good idea. And then he kind of ramped up his whispers and said, not only do I want you to plant a church in North Toledo, I want you to move your family down there.
What gave you this idea? Where were you? Tell us the story about your journey there.
I had actually connected with the church when it was called Northgate in 2004, when they were having an after-school program. And I remember standing in the sanctuary, and I asked myself this question. I wondered what it would be like to pastor a church and like this. And then I went back to doing my ministry. Well, fast forward to 2008, when I went to Thailand for 2 weeks. With our district for a conference, and the last day we were in Bangkok. And Bangkok, there's this tallest hotel, has a revolving deck where you can see the whole city. So after dinner, I went out there and I was standing on this revolving deck at this, looking at this city of 14+ million people, and God whispers and goes, "Don't forget about North Toledo when you get home." And so I fought those thoughts all the ride during the flight home, and by the time I got back, I thought, you know what, I think this is God. Mm. And so it was at that time I said, I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to make a connection between what was then Northgate and Westgate, which is where I was on staff. And so that's where we did our first big serve with 5th and 6th graders, where we went and lived at the church, and it was a huge risk. And but it was an awesome success. The parents got really excited about it, and so then the momentum started. For the next 2.5 years, we did things like Operation Backpack. We helped them out with their summer block party, adopt a family, and all that time, God is moving my heart more and more and more to North Toledo.
And you mentioned earlier, 4 kids, wife. This isn't just taking yourself from that comfortable lifestyle. I mean, your entire family. So what was their reaction?
My wife, when I told her, she was more excited about it than I was.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and my youngest son, when we started talking about moving, he loved the place where we were living, just absolutely loved it. And so that was a struggle for him. And people need to understand what God was asking me to surrender.
Yes. I read your book. I read the passage, the note that your son wrote, and I couldn't read it right now, else I would start crying. To move your family like that, and to have your son write you, that kind of note. I want to encourage folks out there to pick up the book, because you really tell some great stories in there, and you really sense your passion, for this ministry and why you're doing it.
Yeah. My wife, she couldn't wait to move into North Toledo. And because if she was not completely 100% behind it, we wouldn't have gone that direction, because we're a team.
That's good.
And so, but it's like moving to a foreign country. It's a completely different culture.
So what were some fears, that you guys had going into it?
Well, I call them excuses, but you can call them fears. That's fine. One was I didn't know how I was going to get paid. I didn't know if my wife was going to be willing to move into the hood. I didn't know how we were going to be able to sell our home, because it was in one of the worst housing markets ever. I didn't know if any suburbanites were going to want to come alongside me and help me plant a church in the hood. I didn't know anything about urban poverty. And I am white as a marshmallow, and I'm Irish and ginger-haired. And so it is a completely different culture, and so I fought it. In fact, almost half of the book is my struggle with answering God's call. And coming to the point of where all of us as Christ followers, God calls us, when He calls us and leads us to a place, is getting to the point where we're willing to surrender 100%.
Now, you mentioned financially. How did you make this work?
I was working at Westgate Chapel at the time, and so it's really kind of a Nehemiah story where Once Kelly and I were convinced that God was calling us, I met with my boss, Larry, and said, I feel like God's calling me to plant a church. I'm pretty sure it's in North Toledo. You're going to have to find my replacement, and I want you to pay my salary for the next 4 years. In the worst economy ever, and I'll never forget his response. About 30 seconds goes by, and he goes, well, I need to let you know, I'm surprised it took you this long. And so we came up with a plan to present to the elders, and presented it to the elders, and they unanimously voted yes.
You
and
know
so,
it's a God thing. You
yeah,
know
well,
it's a God thing.
yeah, and at that point I'm like, oh, there's no turning
gotta
back
go now.
you know. So they made a commitment to us, and they have kept that commitment past the 4 years.
Yes,
and
the time has passed, so
yes,
how are you guys sustaining
and,
yourself now?
I am, what's awesome is that our service is on Saturday night, because no one will get up on Sunday morning. So we do Saturday night, which allows other people from other churches to get involved with us on a Saturday night, and then go to their church on Sunday. And so Sundays, I'm usually out speaking at other churches. Okay. And so I knew that developing partnerships was going to be really important for us to become self-sustaining. Okay. And so we call them redemptive partnerships. And I talk about that in the book, and it really is a picture of God bringing redemption, not only for those that get involved with our ministry, helping to bring redemption to our neighborhood, but it brings redemption to them. And it helps them to experience something that maybe they've never experienced before, but is a total God thing. And so Isaiah chapter 58 gives this picture of when you get involved in helping those that are oppressed and those that are marginalized, God actually uses that to heal your soul in a way nothing else does. And so that's what has taken place with us. And so I'm continually reaching out to other churches and developing partnerships with churches and organizations and individuals that would want to become part of what God is doing in our neighborhood.
Well, you guys do have a lot going on over there in that neighborhood,
We do.
and we're going to hear more about that and how folks can get involved in just a little bit.
Setting aside your own preconceived notions, coming alongside of a ministry, and being willing to help any way that you can. And I have seen that be extremely powerful when people get involved with us.
Now, back to Main Street.
Well, I am here with Pastor Pat Cannon, pastor of That Neighborhood Church in Toledo, and also author of Rooster in the Hood. And Pastor Pat, we've been talking about your journey into the hood and, you know, pastoring That Neighborhood Church. If you could tell us a little bit more about the church and the ministry work going on down there.
Sure. The church that we're in, the church building, has actually been there since 1907. And so it's been, it was first an English Lutheran church, then it was a Nazarene church, then it was empty for years and years and years. So the church has had a presence there for quite a while. And but our goal in starting this church is actually to create an environment where folks in our neighborhood are going to feel good about coming to church. Because those that grow up in generational poverty, there is a lot of distrust. And distrust towards church, distrust towards God. And so we're all about creating environments. And every environment we create is consistent, no matter what that environment is. And so we have a lot of kids and students that come. A lot of the kids and students are orphaned in our neighborhood. A lot of them are raising themselves. And so we want to try to create an environment where they actually love to come to church. If you get there early on Saturday, there's a line of kids waiting to get in. For them, it's one of the only places that they'll experience all week where they're loved, where they feel valued, It's a place where we set boundaries and are desperate for boundaries in their life. And then we have a lot of adults. We have adults that come are adults that are either former addicts or they're still using. They might have been in prostitution. And then we have some families that are really trying. They're trying really hard to raise a family and in our neighborhood. And so we try to create very consistent environments for folks in our neighborhood.
With generational poverty and impoverished neighborhoods, quite different than middle class.
Very much, yes.
Neighborhoods.
It is. It would be like going to a foreign country. Those that are generational poverty is defined as somebody that grows up in poverty. There's for at least 2 generations. So you grew up in poverty. Your mom grew up in poverty. So that's pretty much your normal. That's what you know. And so those that are raised and grow up in generational poverty, there's some missing pieces to the puzzle. That those of us that are raised in middle class, we just take some of those things for granted. And yet our neighbors, those missing pieces to the puzzle have a direct effect on their lives and why they make decisions. And so, but the key thing is, in our neighborhood, they just want to know, do you love me? Mm-hmm. And they want to know, even if I don't come to your church, even if I don't believe in your Jesus, are you still going to love me? And so God's love is extremely powerful. And so that's why we try to be very, very consistent.
Now, how can people and churches, how can we help?
There's a number of different ways. Whether you get involved with our ministry or another ministry that's involved in an urban setting. One is, I would recommend that they do read my book, because we've made mistakes, and there are some stereotypes that somebody has when they come into an impoverished urban setting, and it's really important that they come at it from a poverty mindset and not a middle class mindset. And so some of the ways that people can get involved with us, one way is getting involved with us on Saturday nights during our service. We have a lot of volunteers that come in, and they help in the children's ministry while we're doing our service. Other ways are, we have a lot of different projects that are going to be happening this coming spring and summer, and which are part of our ministry, where they can get involved with renovating things and demoing areas, buildings, coming alongside of we might be starting gardening again this coming summer, so they can get involved in that. So, I mean, there are a lot of different, pieces to the puzzle where people can get involved.
Now, in your book, you talk about getting involved, that there are also, so there's healthy ways and there's unhealthy ways.
Right.
Maybe you could contrast some of those.
In there, I talk about coming in and helping in a toxic way versus a healthy way. And a toxic way would be coming in with your own agenda, and or coming into the neighborhood thinking that you're going to fix them, and versus coming into the neighborhood to build relationships and get to know people. Coming into especially an urban ministry, coming into an urban ministry to try to figure out, what do you really need, versus this is what I think you need. And trying to figure out how to get involved and to just serve, and without any kind of hidden agendas, and just being willing to get involved in whatever way would help the most within that ministry is really, really important when you're getting involved in an urban ministry. And setting aside your own preconceived notions, coming alongside of a ministry and being willing to help any way that you can. And I have seen that be extremely powerful when people get involved with us. And And so, you know, for anybody that's thinking about getting involved in our ministry or another ministry, one of the first things I would do is I would have a sit down with that person in that ministry and really talk about what is it that you really need. That I can, you know, come alongside and help.
And I know you have some things that are happening this summer.
Yeah.
You're really excited about the small business kind of models that you have going on.
Yeah, let me explain to you a couple of the things that we're doing. One of them is going to be called the Plank Factory, and that is a working business that's going to be in the neighborhood. And so it's really about creating an employment life skill environment. And so what we're going to be doing is repurposing wooden pallets to make furniture. And so we have a building that's in North Toledo, and so we've got a new roof, we've got some glass block windows in there, we're raising some more money so that we can continue the renovations. But our goal is to make that a place where we can teach folks from our neighborhood how to work and what it means to work, and what it means to create a product that people are actually going to buy, and what it means to be to get up every single morning, consistently go to work. We won't work 8 hours, we'll have a 5-hour day, because a lot of our folks, they've never worked 8 hours. And so, but it's really about creating, again, it's about creating an environment. The second part of that that we have going on is that neighborhood resource center. That is a couple of buildings that are next to our parking lot, and so that's going to be a place where we're going to do youth leadership development. We're going to put the clothing closet's going to have a permanent home in there. We're going to put our GED classes are going to happen in there. We're going to put laundry facilities in there. A lot of our neighbors don't have washers and dryers. Closest laundromat's 9 blocks away. So the only way they get clean clothes, throw away their old clothes, come to our clothing closet twice a month to get clean clothes. So again, we want to create an environment there. And then there's a house behind there that's going to be a home for interns. And so we're going to become a greenhouse environment, which means we're going to train people how to do urban ministry. And so they'll live in that house for about 2 years while they're learning how to do urban ministry. After that, they'll go and reproduce what we're doing in another part maybe of the city or in another city. And so those are some very real, when we need renovating all of that stuff this coming spring and summer. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities for people to get involved if you want to get your hands dirty.
And how can people find out how to get involved then?
You can contact us through, we have 2 different websites. The first one is www.lovegodlovepeopleproveit.com. That's our church website. And then the other one is our community development website, which is thatneighborhoodfoundation.org. If they go on there, there's places for them to find what we're doing, how to get involved, letting us know what they like to do. If you're a painter, if you like to build things, if you just like to get involved in those kind of projects, you can get involved there. And also on That Neighborhood Foundation website, we're going to have an area there that's going to list all of our current needs so that you can get involved that way too.
All right. Well, sounds like a lot is going on over there at That Neighborhood Church. And so thank you, Pastor Pat, for coming in and sharing that with us. And be sure to pick up Pastor Pat's book at Amazon.com to hear the full story. And in just a moment, we're going to talk about why Jesus plus opportunity equals life transformation.
Now, back to Main Street.
Perhaps you have a loved one or friend who's living in poverty and not walking with Christ, and you're wondering, how can I reach them? How can I see life transformation? Well, in Rooster in the Hood, Pastor Pat shares a simple equation to help us understand how to truly make an impact into people's lives. He says, Jesus plus opportunity equals life transformation. It says, if we only provide opportunities without Jesus, we become nothing more than another social agency without the transforming power of God. If we only have the Jesus side of the equation, we become, as Paul describes in 1 Corinthians 13, a noisy gong and clanging cymbal. So in other words, it doesn't matter what we say if they don't know that they're loved and that it's unconditional. And you see, God not only wants to impact their lives for eternity, but also provide opportunities for healing in their lives today. We need both Jesus and opportunity. Well, thank you for joining us on Main Street today. We'll see you next time for another great episode.
We hope that Main Street has been a blessing to you today. Please feel free to contact the following to learn more about the topics discussed on today's show. WLMB would like to thank all the faithful supporters of WLMB that make this program possible.